Welcome back to the Sam Acho Podcast featuring Cliff Marshall. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. And I know I want to do this introduction, but Cliff, you usually introduce our guests. So I'd love for you to introduce our special guest for today.
Yes, Sam. Today on the podcast, we're talking with Bayleigh Wheat. Bayleigh is driven by a passion to help athletes thrive. She currently serves as the Regeneration Coordinator at Sports Academy in Dallas, Texas, where she helps athletes through their recovery and restorative exercise journey. In addition, she is an athlete herself. For the last 14 years, she has participated in roller derby, and we are definitely excited to talk about that. But Bayleigh, more than anything else, welcome to the Sam Acho Podcast, and it's special because you are the first female guest that we've had on the show. So Welcome, Bayleigh. Yes.
Yes, we're so hyped. We are so hyped.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited, and I feel a great honor to get to share my story a little bit. And, I love Sam. We've had some really wonderful conversations, and so I know that it's going to be a great day. It's going to be a good conversation.
Yes. And I know I don't love doing intros, but Bayleigh, I had to make a call before we started the podcast. I had to call BMAC. BMAC helps run Sports Academy. And I said, hey, give me some juice, not just on Bayleigh, but also on Sports Academy. I'll give a little bit of background. So I live in Dallas, Texas. Bayleigh, you work at this facility called Sports Academy. And I want to get a little specific for the people who are listening. So the Sports Academy, they train NFL athletes, NHL athletes, Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. They train MLB athletes, you name it. They can't train everyday athletes, you name it, they do it. But I'm going to get specific because the NFL draft just happened. This last draft, you all trained 5 first-round picks.
Yes.
In the NFL, there's 44 total NFL combine guys that y'all train. Even the offseason, correct me if my numbers are wrong, but I heard 131 players from January to July in the offseason. That's like 7 or 8% of the NFL was training with you. And then go on. We talked about that. Also talked about the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. You talk about some of the work that you do, even with everyday athletes, not just pro athletes, but everyday athletes. And you're the Regeneration Coordinator. So when it comes to the modalities, when it comes to getting players' bodies right, their minds right, that is what you do. And so my question is, how did you get into this field of working with some of the best athletes in the world?
Yeah, so it's been quite a journey, honestly. I never would have guessed that this was where I would be at this point in time, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy for the journey that I'm on. I just like sports. I like coaching. I like movement. And so when I went into college, I originally started out actually at a junior college. So pretty simple, just wanted to get the basics out of the way. I didn't have much guidance on kind of approaching the college experience as a whole, right? And so it was something that I was really kind of learning on my own. And by the time I got to choosing something a little bit more in depth, I was like, kinesiology, the study of human movement, like I love to move. Why wouldn't I want to study that? And so I dove deep into that track in that field and was studying kinesiology pre-PT originally. So I was going to go to PT school. But then I actually did my internship with Sports Academy, my final semester of college. And that's where I really got exposed to just how vast that the performance industry really is. And I wanted to go to massage school. Hold on, I'm going to adjust my headphones.
Yes.
You can still hear me good?
Yes, we got you.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to just set that last bit back a bit from when from school.
Yes.
So my final semester of college, I did my internship with Sports Academy as a performance coach intern. And that's where I really got exposed to just how vast the performance industry is in terms of physical therapy, performance coaches, skills coaches, bodywork specialists, recovery specialists, and all those kinds of things. And so truly that exposure there is what led me into the journey. And Sports Academy gave me that platform to be able to do that, and the parameters to be able to meet all of these wonderful athletes across all these different fields. And so it's really just like history. I feel like I somehow just ended up here.
But you say that, but you work with some of the best in the world. What is the data? And I know that because I showed up. I showed up to Sports Academy. I'm retired. I'm not playing anymore. but I'm over here trying to train with these guys and run with these guys and lift with these guys. These are like, some of the highest paid, best players. And I'm trying to keep up. But also then I would meet you. I remember it was a Thursday, and it's like unbelievable restorative regeneration. Like you think athlete, you think, okay, they lift, they run. But with you, it was something different. You had these, like, I don't know what these long poles are. You're trying to, like, you want to do all this stretching, on our toes. Like, what does the day-to-day look like for you, specifically working with some of these athletes?
Yeah, so as that regeneration coordinator, I really oversee kind of three big areas, and that's going to be our recovery. So making sure that on the passive side, things like a sauna or compression boosts, hyperbaric oxygen chambers, that we're really optimizing those modalities within the performance program. That second part is, like you were saying, those restore sessions. So those corrective exercise and mobility sessions that really focus on optimizing movement efficiency in those joints and in those tissues that these guys are kind of constantly training really difficultly, right? So when they train, a max speed day, instead of coming in and training more hips and more glutes where they're going to just kind of continue to beat themselves down, we take one day off and we say, hey, we're going to actually stretch these areas, and we're going to do some soft tissue on the areas that need to be released. And then we're going to try to optimize that range of motion in those joints. So that's a lot of times where we use the stick mobilities. Those are those kind of long orange sticks that we can use for leverage and stability to kind of put these athletes in positions that they wouldn't really otherwise be in a training program or in their football program. So I would say that, plus just overseeing and coordinating, what does their performance program look like and how are they feeling, right? After they come in for a long, training week, how are they feeling at the end of the week or towards the end of the week? And then how are we adjusting their program for the following week?
Wow. I love that, Bayleigh. My philosophy is you got to train hard, but then you have to recover hard. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing at Sports Academy. One of the things that I thought was really cool is I was on the Sports Academy Instagram page, I think, and I saw that you got to actually travel to Indianapolis and you were a part of the NFL Combine. Can you talk about that experience and how you kind of prep the players before, they run the 40-yard dash and everything?
Of course, yeah. So it's been an awesome experience getting to be a part of the Combine program. This year was my fourth Combine program, my third year getting to go to Indy. So leading up to the athletes going to the Combine, really our goal is to have a bit of an education piece to these athletes. A lot of these guys coming out of college programs have never had training like this or been put through sessions where they're stretching and then activating and creating range and doing all of those things. So for those 8 to 12 weeks that we have those guys, it's a really awesome time to really just instill in them how important it is for them to take care of their body. Because ultimately, we don't want to just prepare them for the Combine. We want to prepare them for the next 5, 10, however many years that they're going to be playing in the league, right? So I would say during the 8 weeks of the program, it's a little bit of that and educating them as well as taking them through these programs and these movements. But then when it comes to actually being at the Combine, it's a little bit more hands-on approach. So once the guys drop in, we have a full protocol from the day that they drop in. We have a speed prep day. We have a power prep day. We have all of these different preps based on what they're going to do kind of in the following day to get their bodies ready, very similar to what we do in that 8-week program. But then as well, these guys are going to Combine and they're sitting around, right? They're doing their interviews, they're doing medical, they're waiting around. And a lot of times, that's not what their body is used to doing, right? They just got off an airplane. And so the body work side of things is where that comes into play. So once these guys get done, whether it's that, or I've had guys come in as late as, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night after their sessions, they've done their interviews, and just an opportunity to kind of calm their nervous system down a little bit. Any of those areas that are tight or kind of sore, achy, we're able to then address those things so that when they do go to do their performance, their 40-yard, they're able to perform and do what they need to do.
Wow.
Go ahead. You gotta go.
No, I just got to share. It's pretty cool. I'm just remembering from 2011, I was with Sam at the NFL Combine. I was blessed to train him for that event. And the night before, as you said, I remember Sam coming to my room and Obviously, there's a lot of nervous feelings. There's a lot of anxiety, but to have him in the room and just talking with him and praying with him, and then we kind of walk through every drill together. Then the following day, watching him go out and dominate the combine and break an all-time record there. I remember watching it on TV, and I just remember the thrill that I had. It was almost as if I was out there running with him. I'm anxious to know, do you experience similar feelings like when your athletes have success like that?
Oh, 100%. I will tell you right now from this year, probably our most notable reaction, and I wish I would have got it on camera, was Armand Mimbu. So when he ran his 40, he is noted as the guy who was essentially screaming down the 40-yard dash the whole way through. And when he did that, everyone in the room was absolutely stunned. And I think also being an athlete myself, just feeling those nerves and that tension kind of build up leading up to them actually hitting that performance, it is absolutely exhilarating. And so it's really exciting to see these guys overcome those feelings and do what they ultimately just know how to do.
No, that's so good. And even Cliff was talking about it, Bayleigh. It didn't hit me till he talked about it. Now I'm thinking about you talking about it. When I was training for the NFL Combine, I mean, there are these nerves. Like it's you spend 8 weeks or 8 to 10 weeks like so focused, so dialed in for one day.
Yeah.
To peak. Moment. Ideally, you're going to peak at the right time. And it's hard. I remember when I was training with Cliff, so we did my off-season combine training. It's at Ignition and the facility that he started, the founder of it. And I remember this idea of, he told me, he said, "Hey, Sam, when you go and when you run your 40, I want you to pray. Like, you got to wait in your stance for like 2 seconds." He said, in those 2 seconds, pray that. I said, pray. He said, yeah. I said, pray that God would give you the strength and the courage to run your fastest times ever. And that goes to this idea of, man, it takes courage to perform at the highest level on the biggest stage, potentially of your life, at least at that moment for that opportunity. You talked about seeing Armand get his pretty much record-setting performance. What were your emotions like leading up to watching him perform?
Man, I would just say I was nerve-wracked. Let's just say that, totally just wrecked, excited, right? Obviously, there's a bit of those, is it going to go well? On my side of things, I'm always just hoping, don't pull a hammy, right? Especially when, as long as you don't do that, I'm happy, Performances, PRs are great, but at the same time, I just want you to be healthy at the end of the day. And so I think that there's a little bit more of those feelings tuned in and hoping, did we do everything right in our program, right? Did we prep them the right way? Did we loosen the right tissues, right? Did we take them through that regression period or that taper phase in the program at the right time, right? And so that's something that's constantly evolving, I think, year after year. Even what we did last year has changed and evolved what we did this year, right? And so I think each year we're almost a step closer and a step closer to giving these athletes, the exact formula of what they need to be able to go out there and perform. And like you said, peak at the right time when they need to.
Yeah, Bayleigh, it's also pretty cool that you get to be a part of the NFL draft experience, right? You're at the combine, you're with these players, you're watching them perform, and then you have to wait about a month until the NFL draft rolls around. And can you just talk a little bit about the draft experience? And I know that was just this past week, and kind of, the feeling that you get when you see one of your clients being drafted on national TV.
Man, it's just so absolutely wonderful. These guys train sometimes their whole life for this moment, right? And there's always, I think, moments of doubt, right? In everyone's kind of journey, maybe some more than others, right? It could look a little bit different for each athlete. And so I think as somebody who has a very close and intimate touch points with these athletes, it's critical that we can kind of remain steadfast for them, right? And be somewhere that when they do have these doubts, we can kind of help to settle them and give them the confidence that they need without over boosting an ego, right? So it's all about kind of maintaining that balance, but then of course, being able to celebrate the wins of, of being drafted and maybe being drafted, higher or being signed, lower than what you think your pick was. Like no matter what it is, it's a win ultimately because it's that next step in their journey. And so, it's a lot of feelings and a lot of joy really getting to see these guys earn what they've worked so hard for, right? And it's an honor to be a part of that journey, I think.
And Bayleigh, you talk about the experience of those athletes, some of the ups and the downs, the joy, the doubt. But you are an athlete yourself, an elite athlete at that. What was your experience like getting into roller derby? I want to get into that journey a bit.
Yeah, we can switch it up a little bit. So my journey into roller derby is quite peculiar, right? It's definitely not your everyday sport. When I tell people that I'm a roller derby athlete, I usually get the initial response of, "Oh, you roller skate and you like punch people?" Not quite, right? So, or I've seen that on, TV. It's probably not like you've seen it on TV, right? But I actually got into it just growing up at the roller skating rink. So my family, my mom and dad had gone to a little skate party with some of their friends, and my dad went and saw that he could bring the family to a skate night. They had a bargain night during the week where you could come in and skate for a couple of bucks a person plus your skate rental. And my dad, like, why would we not bring a family of 4 in to have a couple hours of entertainment for just $10, right? We can go spin in circles and have a good time, and it was all good. And so I actually started out as a figure skater. We started taking skating lessons there at Interstate Roller Rink. And once you get to the end of their lessons, it kind of transitions into a figure skating group or class. And so I actually did that for about a year and a half, 2 years. And once it got to the point where we started doing performances and whatnot, I was a little bit more of a tomboy back then. And so they would pop out these, dresses, these figure skating dresses. And I was like, oh, there's no way I want to wear that. This was not really my style. And so it wasn't long after that I just started going to the rink. It was a bit of a rink rat. I just enjoyed going and spending the weekends there, like most young kids. I feel like back in the day used to, right? I hear people, the next generation, they're like, we spent all the time at the skating rink, right? And so it was a little bit less popular, I feel like, in the early 2000s for people to be spending that time at the rink like that. But I loved it. And when roller derby kind of spread throughout DFW, so there was the original league, Dallas Derby Devils, was one of the original 13 leagues in the WFTDA, which is the Women's Flat Track Roller Derby Association. We also had 2 other leagues pop up, one in Denton and one in Plano. And as those leagues started popping up, a lot of these girls that were getting into the sport just needed more time on skates ultimately, right? And so they would come to the skating rink where I had been spending years already, just going and playing around and skating, having a good time. They would come and see me, and I was quite tall, kind of lanky then. But they approached me and they were like, wow, you're such a good skater. You should definitely get into roller derby. And I was like, okay, yeah, this sounds like a good idea. Sounds like something I would like. I'm liking the vibe. What do I got to do? Well, you got to be 18. And I was like, well, you guys have like 5 years, because I was only about 12 or 13 years old at that time. So I was still pretty young. But I was like, if you guys come up with a junior league, call me. I'll come through, right? And it wasn't probably about 6 months later, I had somebody that approached me and was like, hey, we started a junior league. We're getting started next week. If you come out to our first practice. And so that's ultimately how I became one of the founding members of one of the first junior leagues in the DFW area, the Rolling Rebellion, which I continued to play for throughout the rest of my junior career. So I was about 13 years old. So I was 18. So I spent about five years playing for the league. And we traveled and played internationally or nationally. So it was a very, very cool and fun experience kind of getting into it.
And I got to follow up real quick. Hold on. So like what, so you say roller derby, people say I've seen that. What does roller derby look like? Describe to us what a game is or tournament.
Yeah, sure. So we call our games bouts. The roller derby bout is typically what they call them. Played against 2 teams. You have about 15 people, or you can have up to 15 people on a roster, both sides. On the track, or on a particular play, you can have 5 people from each team on the track. Of those 5 people, you got 4 people who are offensive and defensive blockers. They make up what is the pack. Their goal is to kind of stay together and play offensively and defensively based on the person who is scoring the points. So that fifth person on the track is called the jammer. They are the person who scores the points. So for every person on the other team that the jammer passes, you score a point for your team. So when you're playing, essentially your goal is to get your jammer through the pack, right? While keeping the other jammer within the pack or not letting them pass you. And so there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to how many players are playing offense, how many are playing defense, when are you kind of doing those things? And the game is broken down into two 30-minute halves. And those halves are broken down into plays that can last up to 2 minutes, right? And so then at the end of the game, whoever scores the most amount of points wins. These can be, upwards of 300 points sometimes, depending on, how well a team is skating or maybe even the mashup. You can see two really, really high level teams that are both really good, but maybe they're both doing poor defensively. So they both score a lot of points and it's a high scoring game, right? You can have the opposite happen as well, where they're both doing well defensively. The jammers aren't able to get through. It can be a very low scoring game as well.
Bayleigh, I have to ask you, as the Regeneration Coordinator at Sports Academy.
Say that one more time for me.
I said I have to ask you, as the Regeneration Coordinator at Sports Academy, and we're talking about your roller derby here, what muscles are most often injured, or what's the overuse injury with roller derby?
Overuse injury is probably going to be a bit like probably hip flexors, maybe glute, maybe low back a lot of times in terms of overuse. But I would say, and I would say for the an injury that's very common is going to be an ACL injury, and as well as like ankle breaks or sprains as well. So, but I think ACLs specifically because of the position that our body's in when we're playing, we're in a lot of flexed positions. And so I think that there are some compensations that happen there that end up causing a bit of maybe knee valgus, as well as women in general have a higher risk of non-contact ACL injuries. And so I think that that's why we see that injury in particular a little bit more than we do any other injury, truthfully.
So we're talking, Bayleigh, about your time in roller derby, but also some of the connections when it comes to your time training other athletes. We were talking a couple of weeks ago and you had mentioned how, or it came to me, I don't know if you mentioned it, I just was asking and probing, but people in the roller derby world are coming to you for advice. I was talking to someone else who trained at Sports Academy. They were like, no, she's the GOAT of roller derby. Like, she's like, people say she's him, she's her of roller derby. What does it feel like to be, obviously NFL's established, but what does it feel like to be in this derby world, have people look to you for whether it's advice or wisdom, or to somewhat be this light?
Yeah, I'd say it's a combination of feelings. Like in some ways it can wear on you a bit, right? It can be a little bit overwhelming at times, right? But at the same time, it also brings a lot of joy to know that the wisdom and experiences that I've had in my professional field have been able to benefit not only myself, but athletes all over in the roller derby field, right? And really be able to push the needle towards legitimizing roller derby as a sport so that it is a little bit more well-known, right? Right now, when a lot of people hear roller derby, they think Saturday morning wrestling, right? They don't think a legitimate sport that should be broadcast somewhere like ESPN, right? And so doing and taking certain steps towards legitimizing the sport, whether it be using your real legal name rather than a derby name, or, right, bringing approaches to training and programming that allow the roller derby athlete to truly perform like an athlete, right? So
I know Cliff got a question for you, Ross. Okay, what do you have what's your derby name, Bay, or do you have a real name? What's the derby name? What's the derby name?
Yeah. So my roller derby name, I picked this when I was like 13 years old. So it's Baby Hurl. So I kind of picked it off of a couple of different things. One, I was the first girl born into my family. And so I thought it was kind of cool. I was always called everyone's baby girl. right? I was mom, dad, aunts, grandma, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of gotten used to hearing that, right? As a nickname. And so then in Derby, we wanted to have something that was kind of spunky, a little bit more like that. And for whatever reason, that's kind of what ended up sticking with me. But when I turned 18 and I started playing with the women, and it was the first time that the roller derby sport as a whole had been on the docket. I want to say it was the 2016 Olympics. It was on the docket to potentially to bid for becoming an Olympic sport. And one of the things that kept it from being chosen as that, the next sport up in the Olympics was some of those things like derby names, right? Mine is a little bit more innocent, but some are not quite so. And it wasn't something that was really family friendly and ultimately, conducive probably to some of the values that the, Olympics hold, right? And so that's when I started saying, okay, I'm just going to skate under, Bayleigh Wheat. And, now most of my teammates call me Bay for short on the track. But yeah, so that's the story of the derby team.
If I hear somebody calling you baby girl, I shouldn't be freaked out. I should say, okay, that's they know her for somewhere else.
Bayleigh, who has had the greatest influence on your life?
That's a good one. That's a great question. I'm probably going to say my grandmother. Truthfully, her steadfastness, I think, in life, and her faithfulness to the Lord, and just how she has always been who she is since the day I was born. Truthfully, I can't think of anybody else who has always maintained that stability, right? Not only in their life, but for their family members. And so such a high respect for her as a woman and, as my grandmother. So I would have to say her.
What, as you reflect on your career as an athlete and also where you're at now, at Sports Academy as a Regeneration Coordinator, what would you tell yourself at 18 years old?
Oh, this is a good one too. This is a reflective question. If I could tell myself anything at 18 years old, it would be to put away any self-doubt and to just dive all in. And don't be afraid of making mistakes, because I think, at least for myself, as kind of a very type A, perfectionist, driven person, sometimes the thought of failure can keep from that opportunity to really succeed, right? So it's like when I think of those moments where, okay, I might fail at this and I didn't do it, I failed anyways, right? So I didn't even open that door for opportunity to succeed. And so to set any of that aside, and don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid of, potentially making a fool of yourself or stepping outside of your comfort zone, because otherwise you're just going to stay in the same space. And that's not what anybody wants to do ultimately, or I would hope not.
Oh, baby, I was going to say baby girl, Bayleigh. Bayleigh, you're talking about not being afraid to make mistakes, but you actually took a pretty big risk not too long ago in getting back into roller derby.
Yes.
What happened? Why? Like, I want to hear, like, what happened for you to get out, and then what made you get back in?
Sure. So I was a junior in college, had been skating, working, going to school essentially, and had been doing that, right, since I was a teenager. So I was pretty used to that flow, and it was great. I had some different skate sponsorships and was traveling doing offsite boot camps for roller derby teams and stuff like that. So it was a really good opportunity there. But as I was in school and nearing my graduation point, I realized that I really had not figured out what I wanted to do with my life in terms of a financial standpoint. What was I going to do to take care of myself? And roller derby at that point in time was not shaping out to be something that was going to be the end all be all for that. And so I had ended up taking a step away from my sport. I think that was late 2019 after our season ended. I just said, hey, I'm going to take a couple of months off. We have tryouts in January. If I think I need to come back, I'll come back. And January rolled around, and there was just something in my heart that said, it's not time yet. You don't need to get back into it. And so I didn't. And it was difficult at that time to forego going to those tryouts. Like at that point in time, you wouldn't have missed me being at a derby event, right? So stepping away from that really gave that separation of myself from my sport. And not long after that, a couple weeks, COVID ended up happening. And so everything shut down anyways. So 2020 through early 2021, not much happening in the derby scene. But once things kind of started popping back up, early 2021, I started going to these scrimmages and some pickup games and just kind of dropping into some practices and whatnot. But I really hadn't committed to a league or to a team or anything like that. And it wasn't a couple of months after that, and only really a couple of handful of times being back on skates in that setting, that I was at a pickup game. It was a going away game for one of my good friends who was moving from Texas to California. Just a scrimmage, co-ed scrimmage, and I went in for a hit on somebody that ultimately ended up leading to me tearing my ACL. And so it was May 2021 that I did that, and that really kind of took me, I would say, out of that ecosystem and away from my sport for that period of time. Because after that, after spending 25 years of my life fully healthy and able to do all of the things, it was really difficult to then have this, short-term disability that kept me from being able to do the things that I've been so used to doing for the last 25 years. And it was really a mental challenge to know that that was going to be only a short-term situation and experience, right? But in the moment, it can seem very daunting and overwhelming in terms of, am I ever going to see a light of day that's different than the days that I was experiencing during that season of life?
Bayleigh,
How to get into it, huh? Sorry.
No, good. It's all
Go
good.
ahead.
no, I just wanted to ask you, dealing with the ACL injury, how has that made you a better coach or a regeneration coordinator at Sports Academy?
Yeah, I think experiencing that injury really gives me the own personal experience of what it's like to deal with setbacks, to deal with injuries, to deal with not being able to, experience and approach life the way that we sometimes want to be able to, whether that's physically or otherwise. And so being able to relate to my athletes and to relate to people who everybody experiences setbacks in some ways, and being able to approach those and let people know that sometimes it is a short-term setback, right? Some people obviously experience certain things in life that they carry with them for the rest of their days, but ultimately it's their mental well-being, their attitude, if you will, that they have control over and can really shape their outlook on whatever that situation might be that they're experiencing, right? And that it's okay. This is part of real life. And I think that experience in my own self allows that connection to happen and be kind of I totally lost the word, but it allows that connection to happen.
Just kind of continuing on that path. Like, what makes Bay Bay?
I think just being real, being in the moment, looking for those real and genuine connections as well, I think makes me ultimately, right? When I'm connected with myself, when I'm connected with other people in those moments, whether they're really good or they're, more of a poor situation, being able to have that true connection with those people, that's what makes me me. Because if I were anybody else, right, it wouldn't be the same, right?
Yeah, that's so good. I want to go back real quick. Cliff asked a really good question about who's had the biggest influence, and you paused and you said your grandma.
Yeah.
What was she like?
Yeah, she's still around and she's an absolute spitfire. She's in her 80s and she runs a private school actually out in Big Spring, Texas, Maranatha Baptist Academy, has for as long as I've known her. And she is probably the best example of like the ultimate Lord's servant, truly, right? And just living her life in such a way that truly spreads his light and his love, right? And she's able to do that, right, through her school, that is her ministry, right? But then even in just every interaction that I watch with her, she's always got that in mind, right? Which is, how can she share the light of Jesus and share his word and share that redemption to everyone that she meets. And I think that is probably one of the most admirable attributes of her. And it's always been that way. It's never not been that way. Like, that's the crazy thing to think about. Like, we think about people who are Christians and people who are, pastors, this, that, whatever, and not always do you meet people who are reflective of what they say that they are, right, within that truth. And this is somebody who I can't ever even think of a moment where she was anything less than living his truth. And that to me is absolutely outstanding.
Bayleigh, really cool to hear you say that she's a servant. Yeah. And I believe that is a generational blessing, because I see you as being a servant as well. Working at Sports Academy as a coach or Regeneration Coordinator, you are serving athletes every single day. So can you talk a little bit about that mindset of how you go into working with these athletes and how, just like your grandma was a servant, you're being a servant as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think every day and in each interaction that we have, it's kind of our duty to live the truth that we want to see, right? And so I think being that servant and having that servant mindset, whether it is your highest paid NFL athlete or it is your, John Doe that, is working in construction and simply wants to get better, right? How do we approach every person that we make contact with the exact same way and ultimately help not make them better, but to help give them the tools and the guidance that they can then take that journey on themselves, and to be kind of a support system for them so that they can get to where they want to be. And ultimately they earn it on their own, right? I don't do anything. I have so many times that clients, they're like, oh yeah, I'm just this way. Like, this is body by day. And I'm like, no, I didn't do this. I didn't do the work. I wasn't running the sprints or doing the stretches or whatever the case is. I just showed you how to do it. And so, I think having that mindset is crucial to being able to approach any of these athletes in any of these moments, no matter what situation or state of physical capacity that they might be in. If they are looking to enhance their human performance, then in front of me is right exactly where you want to be, because that's what I'm going to help you achieve, is whatever your most optimal capacity is within that physical capacity.
And you do that. I'm not, I don't want to go too deep, but not too long ago, last week, I was watching you train a 69-year-old woman named Nancy.
Yeah.
And tell me about Nancy.
I absolutely love Nancy. She is an absolute sunshine. Anyone who meets her would say the exact same thing. There's never a day where the sun is not shining with her. But she is an absolute beast of a woman, beast of an athlete. I could not imagine running sprints the way she does at almost 70 years old. I think it's absolutely crazy. I always tell people I don't train her. I just keep her reeled in, right? So she is somebody who has really earned her phase in life right now, which is she has built 2 multi-million-dollar companies, right, that she has sold off, and she's, now able to experience life off of her investments, right? And she does have some physical limitations. I'll say she has a pacemaker, right, which can change the way that we have to approach training just a little bit, because it makes it so that her heart rate can only go so fast. I want to say it's like 140 beats per minute. So we're not able to go over that, and we're also not able to maintain that heart rate level for long periods of time without her needing rest. And so there's certain training things that we have to kind of consider when it comes to doing her workouts, as well as she also deals with a bit or has been diagnosed with vertigo. And so when it comes to kind of double vision and feeling dizzy, like those are things that are all we have to keep a close eye on, because it can go south really fast if we don't stay cognizant of those things. But otherwise, every day that she walks into the facility, when she walks in for training, she's always happy. It doesn't matter if it's a good day, a bad day, she's feeling good, she's feeling bad. She's always excited to be there. She's always smiling and excited to see everyone. And so you can't help but be happy when you're around Miss Nancy.
That's so good. Well, I know we're coming to a close, but before we close, I have a question, and then Cliff's got some Cliff notes that he wants to add. My question, and I ask this to every guest. Now, I'm asking you this specifically because you've seen people get the highest contracts in the world. You've seen people go down the opposite path. How do you win without losing it all?
I think the way that you continue to win, no matter what, even if you're losing, is to ultimately have a winner's attitude. The only thing in life that you can control is your attitude. We can't control the weather. We can't control how people respond to us, right? But we can control our attitude. I would say, too, we can't always control our response, because sometimes I think our responses to certain things may come from a little bit of a neurological programming, right? If we always respond to a certain stimulus in a certain way, whether it be good or bad, our bodies kind of become used to responding in that way. But then after that response time happens, what is your attitude about that response? Is it a winner's mentality or is it a loser's mentality? And a lot of times with people that choose that loser's mentality, either perpetuate the cycles that they're in, or they kind of stay stagnant, right? Whereas the winner's mentality, even when they find themselves in that place of loss, in that place of maybe stagnant, no movement, they're always going to find a light. They're going to find that next step, and they're going to initiate that journey, right? To continue staying on the winner's path. And I think truthfully, it is a constant battle and choice that you have to make as an individual, whether or not you're going to be the winner's mentality or that loser's mentality.
And I lied. I got one more quick question. Sorry, Cliff. I got one more. Okay. Actually, no. I'm going to Cliff. You asked, and I got one more little follow-up at the end. My bad.
All right.
That's all me.
All right. Sam and Bayleigh, let me give my Cliff note in today. My Cliff note today is from Pastor Billy Graham. And he says a coach will impact more people in 1 year than most people will in a lifetime. And Bayleigh, what I respect about you is you're impacting so many people in your job at the Sports Academy. You talked about NFL first-round picks. I know you're even impacting NBA players who are coming out there to train for the NBA Combine. And then the 69-year-old Nancy that we're talking about. I just want to know, as you're talking about the impact, what brings you the ultimate fulfillment when you're working with either a client or a professional athlete?
That fulfillment, I think, comes from seeing their win, right? So whether it's a combine athlete who wants to run a particular time at the 40 and then they beat that time, or it's a Miss Nancy who is just excited to come to the session and run, right? Whatever that win is, I've even had clients who have come to me and said, this was the first time I've ever gone to the park and been able to chase my grandson around. Or this was the first time that I was able to put on a pair of pants without sitting down. Like, I think any of those life achievements, whatever, big or small, that's the ultimate fulfillment, is knowing that I was able to help push them to achieve what they ultimately probably already had in the tank, but they just needed someone to nudge them in that right direction.
Really good.
All right. I lied. My last one, Bayleigh. Why do you skate?
I skate because it brings me joy, because I absolutely love it. when I am on my roller skates, that is, I think, the ultimate version of Bay. Like, there is no denying me, whether I'm at skate session and I'm dancing around the skate floor, or I'm on the roller derby track and I'm, taking people out. I think no matter what, it's the most fluid and adaptable version of me, that I get to do both and have, the dance side, which is a little bit more, artistic, right? And then I have this roller derby side, which is more of that athletic piece and kind of that athletic finesse, right, to being an athlete. And so I do it because it brings me joy.
That's so good. Yeah. Every time we talk, when we start talking about skating, you just light up. You light up. And for me, this time has been a joy, just hearing some of your story, but also just hearing Cliff, who's been in this training world for almost 3 decades, see you and just speak that life in you. Like, I get so excited because it's like, man, this is real. Like, y'all just met virtually, right. But it's like, man, there's something about you. You're a servant. There's something about you. You're impacting people's lives. You're not worried about if they're the number 1 overall pick or if they're a 69-year-old who wants to have a pacemaker.
Wow.
You're just making people better. And that's one thing I saw in you, Bayleigh, that just made me want to get to know you more is, okay, who is this person that is literally laying down their pride? Like, you just competed against a team from Mexico City, and apparently y'all dominated, right? Apparently y'all won, you know what I mean? So, like, and you're the captain of your team, co-captain of your team, yet you spend so much of your time serving people. And so that servant's attitude, I think you got a lot of that from your grandmother. And so, Bayleigh, keep on serving, because you're making a huge impact.
Yes, thank you, Sam, so much. I appreciate it. It's been an absolute honor and blessing to have this time here with both of you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank y'all for joining the Sam Acho Podcast featuring Cliff Marshall, aka Cliff Notes, and joining Bayleigh Wheat, hearing about her story and her journey. We can't wait to hear from you soon. Go to samacho.com to listen to this podcast and so many more. We'll see you soon.